Welcome to Bedtime Stories on Canvas, a quiet little corner where soft stories and slow brushstrokes move gently together in the candlelight of the evening. Tonight, as colors slowly blend across the canvas beside you, we travel into one of the most mysterious and tightly controlled places on Earth. A land where silence can feel heavy, where fear quietly follows everyday life, and where even small choices can belong to the government instead of the people. So settle in now, maybe lower the brightness of your screen a little, rest your shoulders, and let the slow movement of paint and the calm rhythm of this story carry you softly towards sleep. And if you enjoy these quiet nighttime journeys together, you can gently like the video and subscribe to Bedtime Stories on Canvas, so more peaceful stories can find their way to you night after night. Now, let us begin. Far away, hidden behind mountains and guarded borders, lies the country of North Korea. To much of the world, it feels distant, almost unreal, like a place frozen inside another time. People often describe it as one of the strictest countries on Earth, a place where the government watches closely, and where nearly every part of daily life follows official rules. For many citizens, the government decides where they may live, what kind of work they will do, what they should study in school, and even the ideas they are allowed to hear. Life there can feel carefully organized, almost as though every path has already been chosen long before a person begins walking it. Even simple personal choices, the kind many people hardly think about, can become matters controlled by the state. Clothing styles, hairstyles, television programs, films, music, all of these things may be approved or forbidden, depending on government rules. Imagine waking each morning knowing that even the smallest details of your life might be watched carefully by unseen eyes. And as the paintbrush quietly glides across the canvas beside you now, perhaps your breathing has already begun to slow a little, the soft colors blending together gently, while the world outside becomes quieter and farther away. In modern times, phones and technology have become part of life almost everywhere, but in North Korea, technology can also become another form of control. Some reports describe government-approved phones that monitor activity closely, devices designed not only for communication, but also for observation. People have spoken about software that captures screenshots at unexpected moments, quietly recording what someone may be viewing on their screen. The information can then be checked by authorities, creating an atmosphere where privacy feels very small. Even inside homes, many people learn to speak carefully. Families who should feel safe with one another sometimes become cautious instead, choosing their words slowly, avoiding dangerous topics, never fully certain who may repeat what was said. Fear, over many years, can change the way people live, the way they trust, even the way they think. There is also something known as guilt by association, a harsh system where punishment may spread beyond one person alone. If someone is accused of a serious crime, their relatives may suffer too, sometimes even future generations. Imagine how heavy such fear could feel, not only worrying about yourself, but also about parents, children, and grandchildren yet to come. And now, as the gentle painting strokes continue beside the story, perhaps your eyelids are beginning to feel softer, the quiet movement of color helping your thoughts drift more slowly, like calm waves rolling across dark water beneath the moonlight. For a long time, the country appeared almost impossible to change. Its leaders seemed powerful and untouchable, their authority standing firm year after year. One of the most recognized figures in recent times has been Kim Jong. Under his leadership, the government continued maintaining strict control across the nation, yet history often changes quietly at first, not always through loud revolutions or dramatic moments. Sometimes change begins softly, inside kitchens, inside small conversations, inside ordinary daily routines, and in recent years, many observers have noticed something unexpected happening inside North Korea. A slow and nearly invisible shift. Not led by soldiers or politicians, but by women. Women who quietly found ways to trade goods, to support families, to exchange information, and little by little, to loosen the government's control over daily survival. What began as simple acts of necessity slowly started reshaping society itself. Tiny changes, almost impossible to notice at first, like the first faint brushstroke appearing on an empty canvas. And if this peaceful story is helping you relax tonight, you can softly leave a comment sharing where in the world you are listening from, or which quiet history story you would love to hear next here on Bedtime Stories on Canvas. For now though, the night grows deeper, the canvas grows softer with color, and our journey into this hidden world has only just begun. The story of life inside North Korea becomes even heavier when we look closely at the lives of those sent to political prison camps. In the early 1980s, a young pregnant woman was taken into one of these prison camps, known as Camp 14. Behind tall fences, and under the watch of armed guards, she gave birth to a baby boy. She named him Shin Dong-hyuk. But unlike most children, Shin did not grow up learning about playgrounds, warm family dinners, or peaceful nights at home. His entire world was the prison itself. The government believed that guilt could pass through bloodlines, that if one person committed a political crime, their children, and even grandchildren, should suffer as well. This idea became part of a cruel system, where entire families disappeared together. So little Shin entered life already carrying a punishment for something he had never done, and as the paintbrush quietly moves across the canvas beside you now, perhaps you can imagine those slow colors blending together softly, while your own breathing becomes calmer and steadier in the quiet night. Inside the prison camp, life was harsh beyond imagination, food was always scarce, and hunger followed people every hour of the day. Shin later spoke about surviving on tiny bowls of corn porridge, never enough to satisfy growing children. Sometimes prisoners searched desperately for anything edible, grass from the ground, small insects, even rats. To many outside the prison, it feels impossible to imagine such a childhood, but inside the camp, survival itself became the center of life. There were said to be thousands of prisoners there, all living beneath strict rules built around fear. The guards made those rules painfully clear. Anyone caught trying to escape would be shot. And even knowing about an escape plan without reporting it could lead. Fear spread everywhere, through conversations, through families, through silence itself. One day, when Shin was only 13 years old, he overheard his mother and older brother whispering about escape. He was still very young, weak from hunger, and shaped by the brutal world around him. To him, the guards were figures of power, and food felt more important than trust. so hoping for a reward, perhaps an extra portion to eat, he reported the conversation to the guards. Months passed quietly after that. Then one morning, the prisoners were gathered together outside. Shin was forced to stand near the front, and there, before his eyes, his mother was guards. The young boy was made to watch everything. It became one of the darkest memories of his life. Afterward, he for months, questioned harshly, and treated with terror. Years passed inside the prison camp. Then finally, in 2005, at the age of 23, Shin saw a chance to escape. It was dangerous beyond words. The prison fences, armed guards, and freezing conditions made escape nearly impossible. Yet somehow, through courage and luck, he managed to flee the camp. Little by little, he escaped the eyes of the guards, crossed borders, and eventually reached China. From there, he later traveled to South Korea, and for the first time, the outside world began hearing his story in detail. Many people across the globe were shocked by what he described. Later, Shin Dong-hyuk became a human rights speaker, sharing his experiences with journalists, organizations, and even the United Nations. His life story was eventually told in the book Escape from Camp 14. In one haunting description, he compared the prison camp to the idea of hell itself, a place filled not with peace, but suffering and fear. Stories like Shin's slowly opened a window into daily life inside North Korea. For years, the country remained deeply secretive, with very little information escaping its borders. But survivor stories began helping the world understand how ordinary people lived there. Around 25 million people call the country home. North Korea often appears much darker. Large areas remain dim at night due to limited electricity across many regions. The country's official name is the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, or DPRK, and yet, despite the word democratic in its title, the political system remains tightly controlled by its ruling leadership. For many citizens, nighttime becomes very quiet. Without reliable electricity, many homes grow dark early in the evening. People often sleep sooner, children may struggle to study after sunset, and televisions remain silent in homes without power. During the difficult years of the 1990s, the situation became even more painful. A terrible famine spread across the country. Food shortages became so severe that many families struggled simply to survive. Some accounts describe people searching forests, fields, and rivers for anything edible. Even frogs, once common in wetlands, began disappearing in certain places as hunger worsened. Historians now consider the famine of the mid-1990s one of the most devastating human-made disasters of that period. The exact number of deaths has never been fully confirmed, but estimates range from hundreds of thousands to possibly millions. And now, as the soft canvas strokes continue beside this story, perhaps your eyelids are beginning to feel heavier, the gentle sound of the narration, and the slow blending paint, helping your thoughts drift farther away from the busy world. Yet what makes this story surprising is that North Korea had not always been poor. In earlier decades, especially between the 1950s and 1980s, the country experienced major industrial growth. Factories expanded, cities developed, and many citizens received government-provided healthcare, education, housing, and public transport. For a period of time, the nation's economy even appeared stronger than several neighboring countries. Some experts once believed North Korea might continue growing steadily for years, but much changed after the collapse of the Soviet Union. The country had depended heavily on Soviet support, fuel, and trade. And when that support disappeared, the economy began struggling badly. Factories slowed down, fuel became scarce, transport weakened, and food production suffered deeply. Little by little, the hardships grew heavier across the nation. And as tonight's story continues gently onward, the canvas beside you may now carry darker shades blending slowly into softer ones, the brush moving calmly, steadily, while your own thoughts begin floating quietly towards sleep. And if you are still awake and enjoying this peaceful nighttime journey, you can softly subscribe to Bedtime Stories on Canvas, or leave a quiet comment sharing what time it is where you are listening from tonight. For now though, the night remains calm, and our story is only beginning to uncover the hidden life inside this mysterious nation. The modern history of North Korea changed dramatically during the early 1990s. Far away, in Moscow, the great power known as the Soviet Union slowly came to an end. For decades, the Soviet Union had supported North Korea with fuel, food, and economic help. Cheap oil arrived from abroad, trade continued steadily, and factories kept running. But when the Soviet Union collapsed, that support disappeared almost overnight. Power stations across North Korea began shutting down, electricity became unreliable, machines stopped working, and food shortages grew even worse. The country's economy weakened heavily, and ordinary families suffered the most. Some people waited in long lines for food that never arrived. Others searched fields and forests simply hoping to find something edible for dinner. During this difficult period, the United States offered aid under certain conditions. One major request was that North Korea reduce or stop its nuclear weapons program, but the leadership refused. As tensions grew, the country became more isolated from much of the world. Trade became harder, resources became scarcer, and life for ordinary people became even more painful. Then, in 1995, heavy flooding struck parts of the country. Fields were damaged, roads were destroyed, and food production suffered again. The government lacked money and international trust. Yet instead of openly changing course, the leadership focused strongly on maintaining control and protecting its image. Their capital city, Pyongyang, became especially important for this image. The government wanted visitors to see a clean and stable socialist capital. So many struggling or homeless people were removed from important areas of the city. Those connected to the ruling party often received better housing, better electricity, and more reliable food supplies. But outside the capital, especially in rural villages, the situation could become heartbreaking. Many families quietly starved, far from television cameras or foreign visitors. The historian Andrew Natsios later wrote about the terrible choices some families faced during the famine. There were stories of elderly grandparents willingly eating less, or almost nothing at all, hoping their younger family members might survive longer. Parents and grandparents sometimes sacrificed themselves quietly for children. It is difficult to imagine such pain. Yet during great famines throughout history, people often make impossible choices simply to keep loved ones alive. And now, as darker shades blend softly into lighter ones on the painted canvas beside you, you may feel your breathing slowing gently, your eyes growing heavier with the calm rhythm of the story. To understand why the country became so controlled, we must travel farther back into history, to the years after the World War II. Before that time, the Korean peninsula had been occupied by Japan for many years. But after Japan's defeat, the peninsula was divided into two separate parts. The northern half came under Soviet influence, while the southern half was supported by the United States. Something very similar happened in Germany after the war as well. East Germany became connected to Soviet influence, while West Germany aligned more closely with the West. In the north of Korea, a former guerrilla fighter named Kim Il-sung rose to power. He became the first supreme leader of the country. Under his leadership, North Korea adopted communist ideas influenced by the Soviet Union, but over time, the country's political system became centered not only around ideology, but around one ruling family itself. Generation after generation, the same family remained in power. First came Kim Il-sung, then his son Kim Jong-il, and later his grandson Kim Jong-un. Today, the government works carefully to protect the continuation of this family's rule, and because of that, the state attempts to guide nearly every part of daily life, where people may live, what careers they may enter, which universities they may attend, and even how they present themselves to the world. Television channels, internet access, travel permissions, all remain tightly controlled. From childhood onward, the system shapes everyday life. School education is officially free, and attending school is mandatory. But many detractors and researchers have described classrooms struggling with shortages, and systems where bribery sometimes influences opportunities. Families with greater resources may quietly hire tutors for their children, hoping to improve their future. Living in Pyongyang itself is often seen as a privilege. The capital contains some of the country's most advanced schools and best facilities. Many videos shown to the outside world focus on these elite places, carefully selected to present an ideal image of life inside the country. After school, many young men must complete military service. For some, the service can last many years, becoming a major part of early adulthood, and although North Korea officially holds elections every few years, the political system remains extremely limited. Only approved candidates connected to the ruling party may stand for office. Voting against them is considered dangerous, and can attract serious attention from authorities. Because of this, the official voting percentage often appears incredibly high, sometimes nearly everyone voting. The government also uses these elections to keep records of the population and monitor citizens closely. Even personal appearance can become part of state control. The government has long promoted approved hairstyles and discouraged styles viewed as too influenced by foreign culture. Certain clothing styles, like ripped jeans or heavily Western fashion trends, have been restricted at different times. Bright makeup and some beauty trends have also faced criticism from authorities. The leadership fears that outside cultural influences might slowly weaken loyalty to the state. To them, fashion is not only about clothing, but also about ideas and identity. There were even propaganda campaigns encouraging citizens to follow what officials described as proper socialist hairstyles. One campaign claimed long hair could affect intelligence or discipline. It may sound unusual from the outside world, yet it shows how deeply the government tried to shape even the smallest details of daily life. And yes, there were authorities tasked with monitoring dress codes and appearance in public spaces. Some people caught breaking the rules reportedly faced warnings, fines, or public embarrassment. The idea behind all this control remained the same: to reduce foreign influence and maintain unity around the state's image. Meanwhile, Outside much of the world, technology moved forward rapidly. New payment systems, smartphones, and online services changed daily life in many countries. But inside North Korea, technological progress for ordinary citizens remained very limited compared to many neighboring nations, and as tonight's story continues, perhaps the quiet movement of paint beside you now feels even softer. Slow brushstrokes crossing the canvas like gentle waves in the dark, helping the body relax more deeply with every passing moment. If you are still awake and enjoying this calm nighttime journey through history, you can softly like the video and subscribe to Bedtime. Stories on Canvas. So these peaceful stories may continue accompanying your evenings, and maybe, before sleep finally arrives, you can leave a quiet comment sharing which hidden place in history you would like us to explore next. Another powerful way the government of North Korea keeps control over its people is by controlling movement itself. For many citizens, travel is not a simple matter. Even going from one town to another may require official permission, documents, and an approved reason for traveling. A person cannot simply wake up one morning and decide to visit another city freely. The government wants to know where people are going, why they are going, and when they will return. And leaving the country entirely is treated even more seriously. Traveling abroad without state permission is considered an act of betrayal. If someone escapes, their relatives may also face punishment, including prison, forced labor, or interrogation. This harsh system connects again to the story of Shin Dong-hyuk. His family suffered because one relative had fled to South Korea, and because of that single escape, multiple generations were trapped inside prison camps. Fear spreads deeply in such a system because one person's actions may affect grandparents, parents, children, and grandchildren alike. And now, as the soft paintbrush drifts slowly across the canvas beside you, perhaps the quiet strokes are beginning to blur gently together. You're breathing slower now, the night around you calm and still. After the global COVID pandemic, the country tightened its borders even more. Reports described border guards receiving shoot-on-sight orders against unauthorized crossings. Despite the danger, people still attempted to flee. Many escaped through the northern border toward China, because crossing land can sometimes feel more possible than escaping by sea, but even reaching China does not always mean safety. The Chinese government has often returned North Korean escapees back across the border, and for many people sent back, the consequences can become severe. Still, despite the risks, some continue trying, because hope can survive even in the harshest places. Inside the country itself, entertainment is also tightly controlled. Foreign movies and television shows are mostly banned. State-run television channels dominate broadcasting, often filled with patriotic programs, military stories, and praise for the leadership. The country's leaders, especially Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-il, and Kim Jong-un, are presented almost like heroic figures larger than ordinary life. Children grow up seeing songs, posters, and broadcasts celebrating them constantly. Watching foreign dramas or music can bring serious punishment. There have been reports of teenagers receiving years of hard labor simply for sharing South Korean television shows. To many outside the country, it feels shocking that something as simple as watching a drama could become a dangerous act, yet despite strict rules, people still search quietly for outside stories. and glimpses of the world beyond their borders. And as the painted colors beside you continue blending slowly together, perhaps your own thoughts are becoming softer too, floating quietly through the darkness like distant lanterns at night. The internet inside North Korea is also extremely limited. Only certain people receive permission to access the wider global internet. Even then, their activity may be monitored closely. For many ordinary citizens, there exists only a restricted internal network, something closer to a closed intranet than the open internet used elsewhere in the world. The government carefully selects which websites may appear there. There are no global social media platforms freely available. No open YouTube, no unrestricted Facebook, no freely searchable internet as many people know it today. Even smartphones are heavily controlled, international phone calls are restricted, apps are limited, and software is designed around government approval. Some reports describe phones taking automatic screenshots at random moments. The system is built to monitor and restrict rather than freely connect people. Imagine carrying a phone that watches you instead of serving you. A place where downloading an app is not simple, where even digital freedom feels locked away behind invisible walls. Religion, too, faces severe restrictions. Officially, the country promotes atheism. Independent religious practice can become dangerous, especially forms connected to foreign influence. Christians in particular have often faced harsh treatment. There are stories of people punished simply for owning or sharing religious texts like the Bible. One reported case described a woman publicly distributing Christian material, while her family was sent away to prison camps afterward. Over time, the ruling family itself became surrounded by a kind of political worship. Portraits of Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il appear across homes, schools, and offices. Their images are treated with enormous importance. Inspectors may even visit homes to check whether portraits are properly displayed and cared for. Many outsiders compare this atmosphere to the novel 1984 by George Orwell. A world where people constantly feel watched. There have even been stories of citizens facing investigation after failing to protect leadership portraits during accidents or fires. Such examples show how deeply loyalty is woven into everyday life. Meanwhile, the economic struggles of ordinary people continue heavily. Large numbers of citizens still live in poverty. Basic items that many people elsewhere consider normal, refrigerators, washing machines, or reliable transport, can remain difficult to obtain. Government salaries are often extremely low. Some defectors described wages so small, they could barely buy enough food for survival. Because of this, women became especially important to family survival. Married women were sometimes less tied to government-assigned work, allowing them to earn money through local markets. These markets became known as jangmadang, and little by little, they changed society itself. Women sold vegetables, clothing, medicine, home goods, and secretly imported entertainment. These markets became not only trading centers, but information centers too. People quietly exchanged stories about life in other countries, about better food, greater freedom, open internet, higher wages, and slowly, some citizens began questioning the system they had always known. The government organizes society through something called the Songbun system. People are divided into different social categories based largely on family background and perceived political loyalty. Those considered most loyal receive better opportunities. Others viewed with suspicion may face restrictions on education, jobs, housing, and travel. Even marriage opportunities can be affected by songbun status. Families connected to past political mistakes may carry those consequences for generations. This creates a society built strongly around fear and loyalty. People often hesitate to speak openly, even with relatives, because anyone might secretly report dangerous comments. Some neighborhoods are organized into small monitoring groups, where residents quietly observe one another. Trust slowly disappears in such an atmosphere, and as the calm narration continues tonight, the soft movement of paint across the canvas may now feel almost dreamlike, brushstrokes fading gently into shadows, while your body sinks deeper into rest. Forced labor also remains a major part of life for many prisoners and workers, from farms to mines to factories. People may work extremely long hours under difficult conditions. Political prison camps are especially harsh. Survivors describe overcrowded rooms, little food, and exhausting labor lasting deep into the night. Hunger becomes constant. Some prisoners survive by eating grass, rats, snakes, or scraps found on the ground. Punishments can be brutal, even for tiny acts like stealing food to survive. Many prisoners die from starvation, illness, or dangerous working conditions. Escape attempts are incredibly risky. Electric fences, armed guards, and freezing terrain make survival difficult. Because of accounts like these, the United Nations has repeatedly accused the North Korean leadership of severe human rights cases. You can better understand how such a system has remained in place for so many decades. The final reason this system has survived for so many decades is something quieter than prisons, and sometimes even more powerful than fear: propaganda. In North Korea, many citizens grow up surrounded by government stories from the very beginning of childhood, at school, in songs, on television, through newspapers, and giant public posters. The message remains almost the same everywhere, that the ruling leaders are extraordinary figures, wise beyond ordinary people, almost superhuman. And now, as the slow brush strokes drift softly across the painted canvas beside you, perhaps the colors are beginning to blur gently together, your thoughts calmer now, your body heavier with rest. Yet history teaches us something important: no system, no matter how powerful, lasts forever, and even inside North Korea, small signs of change have slowly begun appearing. One of the biggest signs comes from the rise of the Jangmadae markets. At first, the government tried hard to crush these unofficial markets. Goods were confiscated, traders were punished, and authorities attempted to shut everything down, but ordinary people depended on these markets simply to survive. Little by little, the markets spread everywhere. Soon, almost everyone became connected to them in some way. Even the government struggled to stop something that had become part of daily life itself. Then, in 2009, the leadership introduced a sudden currency reform. The goal was partly to weaken private savings and strengthen state control again. But this time, the public reaction became unusually strong. For perhaps one of the first times in years, the government faced widespread anger it could not easily divide, and eventually, officials were forced to step back on some measures. That moment revealed something important. Unity among ordinary people can sometimes become stronger than fear, especially when people begin sharing the same struggles together. North Korea is still one of the most tightly controlled nations on Earth, but history moves slowly, sometimes almost invisibly, and another lesson rests gently beneath all of this. When fear divides people, systems grow stronger. But when ordinary people trust one another and remain united, fear slowly loses its hold. Now, the night has grown very quiet. The canvas beside you is nearly complete, soft colors blending peacefully beneath slow, careful brushstrokes. Perhaps your eyes feel heavy now. You're breathing calm and steady, the world outside fading farther away with every passing second. Thank you for spending this quiet evening here with Bedtime Stories on Canvas. If you found comfort in tonight's journey, you can gently like the video and subscribe for more peaceful bedtime histories and relaxing stories beneath the soft movement of paint and color, and before sleep fully carries you away. Perhaps leave a small comment sharing which forgotten chapter of history you would like us to explore together next. Until then, rest well, sleep peacefully, and let the final brushstrokes fade softly into the silence of the night.